What's up, MSR here. Today I'm very excited to announce a new project I call the Ultimate Blog. But before we jump into today's video, please put salt instead of sugar in like button's coffee and run uh, as far as you can from the like button. Note that this is going to be a multi-part series, so stay tuned in. Alright, let's jump into the project. In this project, we are going to create a blogging plus portfolio website with Django as a backend and React as frontend. Now, the most exciting thing about this project is its admin panel or admin dashboard. Now, it's not going to be a typical Django backend with shitty front-end design and messed up fonts. It's gonna look like something like this. This is a WordPress dashboard, but it's just to give you an idea that we are going to create something similar to this. Now I haven't created it, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be better than this monstrosity. Alright, now let's talk about the requirements of this project. You should be somewhat familiar with Django and of course Python. And you should also know the basics of HTML, CSS and JavaScript. If you don't know them, then don't worry, I will try to explain everything as we go in our project. But if you want to learn the basics of Django, then you can check out Corey Scheffer's channel or Dennis Ivy's channels. They both are excellent teachers and I also learned from them. Now let's talk about the details of this project. In this video we are going to create a REST API with the help of Django REST framework and a front end which will be created with the help of React. I will try to do it with Vue also in the future, but for now it is going to be React. And we are going to create two React tabs, one for our client side and one for our admin panel. Alright, let's get into today's video. Alright guys, now I'm in my empty directory named projects. You can name it anything, I just named it. Yeah, that's not relevant. Now one thing I want to make sure is this is only a backend tutorial, which means in this video we are only going to create API routes. We are not gonna create any front-end apps right now. It's for the next video. So first let's jump into our code. Now you can see that our directory is empty. If I do LA, it's not gonna list anything. First let's create a virtual environment. It is not necessary to create, but I like to create it because it keeps my system clean and yeah, that's it. So let's create our virtual environment first. So I'm gonna command python. This is gonna create a directory named env. So now to activate a virtual environment, we are gonna use command source env activate. Alright, now our virtual environment, since our virtual environment has been created, let's install dependencies that we want to use. So we want to use of course Django, and also we want to install Django REST framework. Now let's wait for these dependencies to be installed. Now our dependencies have been installed, and by the way, don't mind this error message, and my internet was just not working. So now I have installed these dependencies. Now I'm gonna install a few more dependencies, but you don't have to install it because you will be probably using VS Code, Sublime Text or other text editor. I'm gonna use Vim, so Vim needs these dependencies on every virtual environment. Alright, now our dependencies part has been completed. Now before we jump into our project, I want to quickly show you the beauty of virtual environments. Now let's say we have installed all of these dependencies, and what if I'm gonna push this project to GitHub or something, GitHub or GitLab, and after pushing it, I I clone it to my other computer or somewhere else. Now, now if I clone that repository to the another computer, I'm gonna have to install every dependencies one by one if I didn't have virtual environment enabled. Now since I have enabled virtual environment, it's gonna keep the dependencies to the project itself. So let me show you example. Now I'm gonna show you a command pip freeze. Yeah, here are all the dependencies that we have installed. We have to install these dependencies one by one if we didn't have virtual environment. So if I'm on another computer, I can do it by one command. How? First let's freeze it to a requirements.txt file. Now if I do ls command, we are gonna see a requirements.txt. If we want to take a look what is in it, then requirements.txt. Here all of our dependencies are in the requirements.txt file. Now if I want to install all of these dependencies at once, what I can do is pip install r requirements.txt and enter. Here it is. I had already installed it in this virtual environment, it is showing that already satisfied. But if you want to install it somewhere else to somewhere new computer, look how easy it is. Now that's out of the way, let's create our first Django project. So Django admin start project tub. Tub is short for the ultimate blog. Alright, now let's cd into our tub directory, and here we can see manage.py and our project name directory. So pretty standard Django stuff. Now let's create an app named blog. So we can do this by python manage.py start app blog. Here our blog project has been created. Now I'm gonna jump into my text editor from now onwards. Alright, so first what we have to do is plug our REST framework into our installed apps in settings.py file. Now after that I'm gonna plug my blog app into this file, into our Django project. Now blog.apps.blog config. If you want to know where did I get it from, then you can go into blog directory and apps.py. Here blog config. Now since our apps has been plugged into our Django project, let's create a Django model, which is basically a skeleton. We can say skeleton for our app. Alright, now I'm gonna call it post. This is our post model. So remember that our blog is gonna contain post, so we want to create posts. So we want, for example, title, category which that post falls into, and description and whole post content. So we can create those models in here. If you know Django, then you are very familiar with this stuff. So first I'm gonna create title, models dot char field. Now max length can be anything for a title. I'm just gonna give a random number 500, and description is models dot let's do this char field only. No, I think it should be text field, because description can be any number of words. Title can have limited amount of words. So description models dot text field. Content models, it is also going to be text field, because it's content, so it can be any number of words. And date posted, it is gonna help us in sorting our posts. For example, recent to old or old to recent posts. So it will be helpful to create dates automatically. Date time models dot date time field. So I'm gonna use it default present time zone. Category dot char field, max length. Category can be anything. For example, if I'm gonna create my blog, then I can give information about Linux, web development and computers. So that is the category. So let's put the max length to 100. Yeah, 100 is fine. Default category is going to be web development or web dev. So now our model has been created. Now till this point there was pretty basic Django stuff. Now from undefined variable, I forgot to import time zone so let's import time zone pretty quickly. What the fuck is time zone? Now our model has been completed. So now till this point we are using Django only. You can see we created model from using Django. Now from now onwards we are gonna focus on creating our REST API. So let's first create a file named serializer.py. If you don't know a serializer, what a serializer is, it is a part of REST framework. It basically converts our models into JSON responses. So if you are familiar with REST API, or if you have ever worked with Node.js or Mun stack, Venom stack and anything, we use JSON responses to display our data. So our serializer file does that. So now there are number of ways to create a serializer, but the easiest way I think is from our models only. So first I'm gonna import serializer class from our REST framework, and from I'm gonna import a blog model, post model from our blog directory. Now I've imported serializers class from REST framework. Now I'm gonna import post model from our blog app. So import post model, and from post model I'm gonna import serializers class from our blog directory. Now I've imported serializers class from REST framework. Now I'm gonna import serializers class from REST framework. Now I'm gonna import post model from our blog app. So import post model, and from post model I'm gonna import serializers class from our blog directory. So post. Now I'm going to define a class named post serializer. It is like models in Django only, and there is nothing different in the syntax, but we are going to use a shortcut. We are going to use our model only. You can directly define a model here, but I like to do it that way. So I'm going to define a class meta and model. I'm going to define, let's define a variable named model named post. So now I'm going to insert fields. We can take fields from our model that we created. Now ID is automatically generated for every model, so we don't have to worry about that. Now I'm going to import title field, description field, content field, and what other field we created, date posted, and category. So this is our basic serializer stuff. So now that's out of the way. Now if you are familiar with Django, we create models and then we create views to view those models. So it is the same for REST framework also. Now I'm going to jump into my views.py file, which is inside my blog app. So first I'm going to insert import post serializer from my serializer file here, from blog.serializers. Import post serializer. So from now I'm gonna import few more things. Now since I have imported these, this is our decorator API view, which will initialize our views for API, for example getting post request or get request, and this is just a response, and this response library will send the response to our browser in the JSON, send the response to our browser whatever thing is created in our database. Now let's create our API views here. So I'm going to use this API view decorator, and I'm going to use it for get request and post request. So I'm going to define post list to get the list of all the posts. Then if request.method is equals to get, then post is equals to post.objects.all, serializer is equals to post serializer post. Now we are going to pass this post variable in here, and with that we are going to pass a variable named many is equals to true. So we are going to return our data which is contained in our serializer. So response serializer.data. Alright, now it's time for now let's define a post method, post request. If request.method is equals to post. Now in this code block we are saying that if the method is post method means we want to create something. So we will create a new blog post. So post serializer data is equals to request.data. So we are defining here that if the method is post method, then the serializer data will be the data that request has sent to it. For example, if we want to create a new blog post, then we will have to send a data, fill up a form for example. So it will send that data to the serializer, saying it that this is a new data, and save it. Okay, so if now we are validating our post here, then if it is valid, a serializer will save it to our database. So okay, now one thing I forgot to import here is from is status. I will tell you one thing about it in a minute. Status. Now in this, our response to the browser is going to be serializer.data. Okay, and status is going to be, if everything is fine, then http 201. If a post is created, then this status will be sent to the browser so that browser knows that everything is fine. But if something goes wrong, then we are going to send 400 bad request status to the browser. So let's do that. Serializer dot errors dot http 400 bad request. So after sending this status, our browser will know that something is bad, so it won't succeed. Our request won't succeed. What the hell is wrong with this shit? Undefined variable. I defined it here. Oh, I made spelling mistake. Serializer. Okay, now that's out of the way. By the way, if you are seeing this error, please ignore it. It just does that sometimes. Our code will run perfectly. So till now we have created our API view for post list. If we want to see the list of all the posts, now let's create a view for the detailed post. If we want to see the whole post from our front end, so it's going to be same for the most part. The only thing is get. It is same. Now we want to request put request, so that if we want to edit some details of our blog, we can make a put request to edit that. Now if we want to delete something, then we have to make delete request. So I hope that's clear. If it's not, then I don't know, contact me. And why is this showing error? I don't know. It will work fine. Now we are going to define post detail function. We are going to pass parameter request. Now it's pretty much the same thing. Now we are going to do some error handling here. Post is equals to post dot objects dot get pk is equals to pk. Here pk means primary key. Primary key means ID of the post. So if you remember, we defined this ID here for our post. So this will be our primary key for the post. Now this is saying, if you know Python, this is clear that it is trying to get that particular post, and if it did not get it, then it is gonna return an exception post dot. We are gonna create a method does not exist. Then it will return response 404 not found. So if we have to write the response, then status dot http all caps 404 not found. Okay, so that's done. This is our error handling block. It is pretty self-explanatory. It is first trying to get to post from a primary key, which is ID, for example 1, so it will get one key. If the post does not exist, then it will return a response of 404 not found. Now let's create our code block for get method. I'm going to fast forward from this point now. Now this, if you don't understand this code block, then it is the same as up here. It's just asking for we are just requesting a get method which will return all of our post data, particular post detail data to our browser. Now we are going to define if request dot method is equals to put means editing something. then serializer is equals to post serializer post. We are going to pass the variable post, and data is equal to request dot data. It is the same as post request. The only difference is we are editing instead of creating the whole post. So if serializer dot is valid, it's checking if our post is valid, then it will save it. Serializer dot save. Now it will return our data to the browser, so that browser knows that changes have been made. Dot data. If it catches something or if there is an error, then it will return response of if then it's going to return status of HTTP 400 bad request, which means our data is invalid. Now the last part is if request dot method is equals to delete. If we request delete method, then it will delete the whole post. Then it is self-explanatory. Then post dot delete. It is gonna return the response of Alright, now our views have been created. We have created a post detail view and post list view. You will understand it deeply when we will use frontend. We will create our frontend, then it will become very crystal clear to you why we define these methods. But for now, just hang on. For the last part of today's video, we are going to define URLs for URLs for our data, so that we can actually visit them and test our API. By the way, I'm going to use Postman to test my API. Where is Postman? It will open up right now. This is Postman. So if you haven't downloaded this, please download it. It is a fantastic tool for testing our API. And I just downloaded it because I installed a new operating system on my machine. So that's why it was pretty fresh. Okay. So now let's create our URLs. So I'm going to create a file name urls.py in our blog app. Now that's created. Let's create some URLs. Now I'm going to import path from Django. Now I'm going to import views from our blog app. Import views. Simple. Now I'm going to define our URL patterns. Oh, I forgot to import path. From Django.urls import path. This will help us define our paths. Now our first path is going to be blog, which blog. So let's post list. This is the route which will list all of our posts, or this is the route which will which will use this view, post list view. It will only contain get or post. Okay. So by the way guys, I'm just following the documentation for now because by the way guys, I'm just following the documentation for now. In the next video, we will customize it our own way, because we are going to implement token authentication for our API to make our API more secure, so that it will be hard to hack it. Alright, this is now the second part I want to define is our post detail view. So blog post, and remember we defined primary key, so this will be helpful in that will be helpful in this. So we will call each post by its primary key, which is its ID. So for example, if we pass 1 in our blog, then it will get 1. I will explain this in few moments. So first let's create this route. Views. Now this is gonna show our post detail view. Okay. So our routes have been created. Now let's verify our let's check if our API is working. So first let's start a server project hub. Sorry. So to start our project, we will use command python manage.py run server. Oh, first we have to make some migrations. Alright. So python manage make migrations. So now we will migrate our changes. Alright, now our changes have been migrated to our database. So let's try to first let's create a super user for a Django admin. So we can do that by python manage.py create super user, so that we have to create it so that we can log into our Django admin panel. So I'm just gonna give it my name, my email address, and password is going to be alright, enter your password again. So now our super user has been created. So let's run our Django server, python manage py run server. So let's visit this route. Here this is a pretty standard Django admin page. Now let's log into our admin panel. My username, my password. So I don't see my post. Let's add our post view to a Django admin panel. So it is very simple. All we have to do is call serializer, import our post model from our serializer, and enter this command. So it will add our post model with this user model and groups model. So let's refresh it now. Our blog has been created, and our post model, we can see our post model. So we can add a new post from here also. So this is first post. Let's do random keywords. Oops. Alright, save. Okay, so we are ready to use Postman. So let's just copy this route first and blog. Now we are going to perform a get request. So this is our get request route. which is post view detail, post view list. Okay, so that's, oops, some error. Oh, I didn't add a URLs to the main project, so let's do that first. Now I'm gonna delete everything from here to here, we don't need that, and include. Now this is going to be our empty path because we have already defined a blog path from our blog app. It will include, we are telling our project to include URL from our blog app too. So now it should work. Oops. I think I made mistake here. I type ink instead of int. Now let's restart our server. Okay, it's working fine. Now let's jump to our API and let's try to run it again. What the fuck? Post is not defined. What the hell is happening? I think I made a mistake in our views.pym file. Let's open that. Post. Where did I made mistake? Oh, I forgot to import our post model. So I'm gonna import our post model from here. That's why it was showing that error and I was just ignoring it. Now alright, I think we are fine now. And here we see our first post. This is our first post. So now our get method is working. Now let's try post method. So now we are creating a new post. So we are gonna write JSON title. Now our title is going to be, this is a second post. Description, random keywords again, and because this is just to show you that things are working, you can type whatever you want. Content and random keywords again, and category is going to be, let's do this Linux this time. So we are now gonna make our post request, and oops. This I wrote the wrong spelling of description. Now let's try it again. Description. Now let's remove time zone for now. We will insert it later. Date posted. We will solve this issue in our next video because it is very long enough. So let's try it again, and hallelujah, here is our first post. So now let's get all our posts here. This is our posts. Yep, it's working. Alright guys, that's it for now. In the next video we will make our API more secure and more friendly for our React framework to use. So peace.